Hello everyone! Today I'm going to talk about something that's both nostalgic and a little uncomfortable: how Disney has historically represented different racial and ethnic groups in its films. From Cinderella to Moana, I grew up loving Disney movies. But as a maturing woman of Korean, Mexican, and Black heritage, I started to notice that some of these stories, while magical on the surface, also carry hurtful stereotypes about marginalized communities. I assume some of you felt a sense of happiness or reminisced on the past when you saw and heard the intro. But rest assured, this isn't about canceling Disney or ruining childhoods. It's about understanding how the media we grew up with shaped our ideas about race, power, and identity. I want to examine how these films reflected and perpetuated the prejudices of their time, why that matters, and what Disney has been doing to fix it. Let's start with one of Disney's most infamous films, Song of the South. Released in 1946, this movie is so problematic that Disney has basically deleted it from their catalog. The story revolves around Uncle Remus, a cheerful African-American man who tells folk tales to entertain white children on the plantation. What makes this so harmful is that it romanticizes plantation life. Uncle Remus is depicted as being content, even happy in his subservient role, which completely erases the realities of slavery and racial violence and discrimination in the South. His character draws from the Uncle Tom stereotype, a black man who is loyal to white people, often at his own expense.
Sooner or later you're gonna be coming around.
Then there's the Mammy character, which isn't a central figure in Song of the South, but is closely tied to this portrayal of plantation life. The Mammy trope, rooted in slavery, depicts black women as caretakers who are completely devoted to their white families, often ignoring their own needs. These stereotypes didn't just make their way into movies, they were everywhere in American culture at the time, from advertisements to minstrel shows. Recently, Disney announced that Splash Mountain, based on Song of the South, would be reimagined as Tiana's Bayou Adventure, based on The Princess and the Frog, which presents a better, non-racist story of Black Americans. It caused an uproar from some Disney fanatics, deeming it unnecessary, but for others, it represented Disney's efforts to move away from their problematic past and towards more inclusive storytelling. While this change is a step in the right direction, it's important to note that it took decades of public pressure for Disney to take action. And then there's Fantasia, released in 1940. While this film is celebrated for its groundbreaking animation, it originally included a character named Sunflower, a black centaur who was depicted as a servant to the elegant white centaurs. Sunflower's features, such as large lips and spike-like braids, were lifted directly from racist caricatures. Disney edited Sunflower out of later releases, but the character is still an example of how the company perpetuated the belief that black individuals existed only to serve white people.
Did you ever see an elephant fly?
Now, let's talk about Dumbo, released in 1941. The crows in this film, particularly the leader who was named Jim Crow in the original script, are blatant caricatures of black people. Their exaggerated dialect, mannerisms, and musical style mimic minstrel shows, where white actors in blackface would mock black culture. Minstrel shows were a form of entertainment that thrived in the 19th and early 20th centuries, and their influence lingered in media long after. The crows in Dumbo are portrayed as lazy and clownish, reinforcing the stereotype that black people are not to be taken seriously. As a child, I loved Dumbo and never considered the crows being caricatures, which demonstrates how dangerous these depictions are because they are packaged as humor for children, normalizing them for the new generation.
Teach 'em, pale-faced brother, all about Red Man.
Racial capitalism refers to the exploitation of non-white bodies for white economic gain. Think about how Native American land was stolen to create wealth for white settlers, or how enslaved Africans were treated as property to make a profit. For Disney, these stereotypes were commodified as entertainment, generating profit while dehumanizing the communities they depicted. Peter Pan, a 1953 film, portrays Native Americans in deeply offensive ways. The quote-unquote Indians in this film are drawn with bright red skin, wear non-traditional feathered headdresses, and speak in gibberish. The infamous song, What Makes the Red Man Red, reduces indigenous people to a joke, mocking their languages and traditions. In the 1950s, when Peter Pan was released, America was still grappling with the aftermath of policies like the Indian boarding school system, which forcibly removed Native children from their families to civilize them. These schools suppressed Native languages and cultures, leading to generational trauma and what we now understand as cultural genocide.
You think I'm an ignorant savage?
Let's talk about the 1995 film Pocahontas. Disney marketed this movie as a love story between Pocahontas and John Smith, but this story couldn't be further from the truth. The real Pocahontas, whose name was actually Matoka, was around 11 years old when she met Smith, a 27-year-old colonizer. Later, she was kidnapped, converted to Christianity, and married off to another Englishman, 29-year-old John Rolfe, at the age of 18.
Hear the wolf cry to the moon.
Disney's version of the story dismisses her agency and the violence of colonization and makes it seem like a cultural exchange rather than an act of genocide. The characters in the movie exemplify the noble savage stereotype, which romanticizes indigenous peoples as pure and spiritual, but ultimately doomed to extinction in the face of Western progress. The message? Colonization is okay as long as the main characters are attractive and the movie has a catchy soundtrack. In recent years, Disney has made some strides toward improving its portrayal of indigenous peoples. In 2019, Frozen 2 included consultation with the Sami people of Scandinavia and demonstrated the true story of their mistreatment by Europeans. But perhaps the most meaningful way to move forward is not just for companies like Disney to consult Native communities, but to actively amplify indigenous voices in storytelling. Independent productions like Reservation Dogs, co-created by Sterling Harjo and Taika Waititi, and Smoke Signals, a film adaptation of a screenplay by Sherman Alexie, directed by Chris Eyre, are led by Native creators and offer authentic portrayals of indigenous life. Aladdin, released in 1992, is another example of how Disney has profited from the savage stereotypes. The opening song, Arabian Nights, originally described Agrabah as a place
where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
The part about cutting off the ear was changed after public backlash, but the damage was already done. The film paints the Middle East as exotic, barbaric, and mystical. Even the character designs reflect racial coding. Aladdin and Jasmine have lighter skin and more Eurocentric features, while Jafar, the villain, is darker skinned and, for lack of a better term, has more Middle Eastern features. This pattern reinforces real-world biases. Colorism exists globally, from media to hiring practices to beauty standards. People in many countries around the world are praised for light skin, while people with darker skin tones are shamed and ridiculed. When kids grow up seeing darker skin tones consistently associated with villains, it can shape how they perceive themselves and others. The Aristocats from 1970 is a character named Shungan, a Siamese cat voiced by a white actor who speaks in broken English, mocking Asian accents. Shungan plays the piano with chopsticks and is designed to be comic relief. He embodies a trope of Asian exoticism that reduces entire cultures to overgeneralizations. In earlier examples from 1955 and Lady and the Tramp, the Siamese cats Si and Am are sneaky, mischievous, and sing in a mocking Asian accent, and again are voiced by a white person. These portrayals tap into the racist yellow peril idea that Asians were threatening or deceitful to the Western world. This was shaped by geopolitical tensions, including World War II and the Cold War. This reinforces white supremacy by positioning whiteness as the default or normal, while framing non-white characters as comedic foils or villains. So what does this all mean for us as consumers? First, it's important to acknowledge the harm in the media we love. Loving Disney doesn't mean we can't hold it accountable. In fact, recognizing these issues is the first step toward pushing for better representation and ethical practices. Disney is starting to make changes. Films like Moana, Encanto, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Turning Red show that they're trying to create more accurate and respectful portrayals of different cultures. However, there's still more work to be done. Representation isn't just about avoiding stereotypes. It's about empowering marginalized communities to tell their own stories. And as consumers, we have the power to demand better. Thank you so much for watching. If this video resonated with you, please like, comment, and share your thoughts. Let's keep this conversation going because the stories we tell matter.